What is going on, guys? It is Christian here of Feel Good Gaming with another video. Today we're going to be going over Negan the Cold-Blooded. It is from the Walking Dead Secret Lair. As many know, people either love it or people hate it. There's a lot of controversy over it. I believe since there's been more announced that people have kind of chilled out a little bit about it, but anyway, we're not here for that today. We're here for a deck tech of Negan the Cold-Blooded. He is Mardu and 2 colorless, so that's red, white, and black, 2 colorless, for a 4/3 human rogue. When Negan enters the battlefield, you and target opponent each secretly choose a creature that player controls. Then those choices are revealed, and that player sacrifices those creatures. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a creature, you create a treasure token. Super quick, just in case anybody has complications going over exactly what this card does, let me give you a hand there. So, when he enters the battlefield, you're going to target an opponent. And secretly, you and that opponent are both going to pick a creature that they control. At the same time, those are revealed. Whether it's, you could use a phone or write it down on a piece of paper. I know it's kind of a pain in the ass, but hey, that's kind of what Negan is, right? A pain in the ass, exactly. So, you're going to reveal both of those, and both of those creatures are sacrificed. Usually, there's a case of if one person the person you target has his commander and a token. They're going to target, I assume, they think in their head, well, there's no way he's going to pick the token, he's going to pick my commander. So in that spot, I'd probably pick the token, because he's going to pick his commander, and I'll get both creatures. That's probably how it's going to go for the most part. Now, you could be taking a big risk. If it's a smart player, they'll think, well, if they pick him, I'll pick the token just in case. Right? I mean, I don't know. It's a tough one. I feel like I'd go for the token and just take that risk, because they're not going to want to lose both guys, right? All right, well, I hope that it helps you understand it a little bit more here. And again, the last part of the text, whenever an opponent sacrifices a creature, you create a treasure token. So this deck, I love the idea of it. You have Ragavan and the whole Goldspan Dragon kind of mono red treasures, and it has developed into like Prosper and Kalane and all of those kind of treasure guys. Now I'm like, let's take it one step up. Let's do Mardu treasures. So as you see, there's treasures and sacrificing in this deck. Let's bring it on to the first category of the video. Thank you for your sacrifice. We have your common sacrifice creatures in this deck, such as Demon's Disciple. It is black and 2 colorless mana for a human cleric. It is a 3/1 that when it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or a planeswalker. This one is a little bit better here because it hits planeswalkers because some of them don't always do. Another one that does, Plaguecrafter. Same mana, black and 2 colorless for a 3/2 human shaman. When it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or a planeswalker. Each player who can't discards a card. So this one is even better. These ones here aren't as good. They don't do the discard thing or the planeswalker thing, but you're going to be wanting to play them in sacrifice decks like this. Is Merciless Executioner. Same mana, a black and 2 colorless, so 3 mana for a 3/1 Orc Warrior. When it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. So you're going to get it done with that one as well. And then Fleshbag Marauder. Black and 2 colorless, Zombie Warrior 3/1. When it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. That's right, we got all of them here in the same deck. Now, next one here, Archfiend of Depravity. 2 black and 3 colorless for a 5/4 demon with flying. At the beginning of each opponent's end step, that player chooses up to 2 creatures they control, then sacrifices the rest. That's really gonna get you those treasures. No doubt. So, let's see. The last sacrifice card here I want to bring up is Vona's Hunger. Since I've started Magic, always has been one of my favorites. A black and 2 colorless for an instant that has Ascend. If you control 10 or more permanents, you get the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. If you have the City's Blessing, instead each opponent sacrifices half of the creatures they control, rounded up. By the time you bring out Negan, you should already be at 6. You're going to make some treasures. You may have some permanents beforehand. So around the time that you get Negan out, it's going to be perfect for Avona's Hunger. Those are my favorite sacrifices here. But who likes these sacrifices? Let me tell you, a couple of nice girls here. Turgid, God of Fright. If you play Magic the Gathering Commander format, you know this card. 2 black and 3 colorless for a 4/5 god with Menace. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from the graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Another one here that loves stuff dying is the new Gisa from the Midnight Hunt. 2 black and 2 colorless for a 4/4 human wizard. I never knew that Gisa was a human wizard. Kind of cool. Kind of cool. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. At the beginning of your upkeep, put all creature cards exiled with Gisa Glorious Resurrector onto the battlefield under your control. They gain Decayed. A creature with Decayed can't block. When it attacks, sacrifice it at the end of combat. At that point, we don't care. You know what I mean? We just want to get in there and get those creatures, because why not? A little bit more expensive version of this here is Grave Betrayal. It's an enchantment for 7 mana, 2 black and 5 colorless, and it reads, whenever a creature you don't control dies, return it to the battlefield under your control with an additional +1/+1 counter on it at the beginning of the next end step. That creature is a black zombie in addition to its other colors and types. Again, that's a little bit more expensive, but a little bit harder to get off of the battlefield. And last 2 cards here, Thrilling Encore is a very similar one to the rest of these here. I love this card. I've always kind of waited for a deck to put this in, and here it is. Thrilling Encore, 5 mana, a black and 4 colors for an instant that reads, put onto the battlefield under your control all creature cards in all graveyards that were put there from the battlefield this turn. You could wait for a board wipe, hold this up. You could, play Negan and just hit somebody with 2 creatures that you really want, kind of thing. So, yeah, you're really going to love this one. I mean, it may be a little hard to pull off, but trust me, if you're making this build with me here, use it and you'll love it. And the last card here in this category, Animate Dead. It is an enchantment aura for black and a colorless. To make this simple text here, when you cast Animate Dead, it's going to take a creature card from any graveyard and attach it onto this aura. The enchanted creature gets -1/-0. If the creature were to get removed, obviously the aura goes away. If the aura were to get removed, the creature does die along with it. But again, most important part, 2 mana for any creature on any graveyard. I play in every deck that has black. I love it. Alright, going on to the next category here to talk more about the treasure strategies with X Marks the Spot. The first card here that everybody's making a big deal about this year, coming from Modern Horizons 2, Ragavan Nimble Pilferer. It is a monkey pirate that's a 2/1 for 1 red mana. Whenever Ragavan deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token and exile the top card of that player's library. Until end of turn, you may cast that card. Or you can cast this for its dash cost. You may cast this spell for its dash cost. If you do, it gains haste and is returned to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. I'm mentioning this card first because I know it is $80, so if it works for you, get it. If it doesn't, don't. Kind of simple as that. And that works great with the next card here as well, because this one's $60, and that's Dockside Extortionist. It is a great card, huge staple in the format, and it's a treasure deck, you know what I mean? So that's kind of why you want these guys. Dockside Extortionist is a goblin pirate that's a 1/2 for 2 mana, red and a colorless. When Dockside Extortionist enters the battlefield, create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. And then I'd say the next best treasure card in this deck here is Goldspan Dragon, a new card out of Keldheim. It is 2 red and 3 colorless for a 4/4 dragon with flying and haste. And it reads, whenever Goldspan Dragon attacks or becomes the target of a spell, create a treasure token. Treasures you control have sacrifice this artifact, add 2 mana of any one color. Now you're doubling down on how much these treasures are getting you, and that is great. Coming from one of the new decks here in the Forgotten Realms is Prosper, Tomebound. It is black, red, and 2 colorless for a 1/4 Tiefling Warlock with Death Touch, and it has Mystic Arcanum. At the beginning of your end step, exile the top card of your library until end of your next turn. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. And as Pact Boom, whenever you play a card from exile, you create a treasure token. Next one here, Pitiless Plunderer, is a human pirate that's a 1/4 for 4 mana, black and 3 colorless. Whenever another creature you control dies, you create a treasure artifact token with sack to add 1 mana of any mana to your mana pool. Another one that you're going to love having treasures with is kind of a newer commander as well coming out of Keldheim. Magda Brazen Outlaw. It's a 2/1 Dwarf Berserker for 2 mana, red and a colorless, and it reads, other dwarfs you control get +1/+0. Whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, create a treasure token. We're not going to be doing that as much. You're loving this part right here. Sacrifice 5 treasures. Search your library for an artifact or dragon card. Put that card on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. And you're probably going to be getting that Goldspan Dragon that was just previously shown. Another one that you could grab. It's maybe not be worth the mana, but check this one out. Gadrak the Crown Scourge. It is red and 2 colorless for a 5/4 dragon, with flying of course. Gadrak the Crown Scourge can't attack unless you control 4 or more artifacts, which we probably are in this deck. At the beginning of your end step, you create a treasure token for each non-token creature that died this turn. This is perfect for Negan. It is sacrificing, it is treasure tokens, it is everything you want. No doubt. Let's talk about one of the best treasure cards in the format. Again, another one of the best cards in the format, yes. Smothering Tithe. It is a white enchantment that's white and 3 mana, so a 4 mana enchantment that reads, whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2 mana. If the player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure token that can be tapped for any mana. Another card that gets you better value out of your treasures is Yorn, I believe. Jorn. I don't know how to pronounce it, but you can let me know in the comments. It is red and 2 colorless for a 3/2 elemental that reads, if you would create 1 or more treasure tokens instead, create those plus an additional, which is super cool, of course, especially with something like Smothering Tithe or Negan himself. Another newer card here, actually in the Prosper deck, is Kalain Reclusive Painter for black and a red, 2 mana for a 1/2 human elf bard. When Kalain Reclusive Painter enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. Other creatures you control enter the battlefield with the additional +1/+1 counter on them for each mana using treasure to cast them, which is really cool and could be kind of, really good late game if that's kind of the route you want to go. Don't see a great path to victory. It's kind of cool. And the last one here in this category, Captain Lannery Storm, is red and 2 colorless for a 2/2 human pirate with haste. Whenever Captain Lannery Storm attacks, you create a treasure token, and whenever you sacrifice a treasure, Captain Lannery gets +1/+0 until end of turn, which obviously is just going to help you attack again to get another one. So, pretty cool here. Let's go on to the next category. As all Negan's fans know, this one's Little Pig, let me in. So, this next category here, we're going to be going over things that are going to give us value and drain our opponents when our creatures die or when artifacts leave the battlefield. First one here is very common. It is Blood Artist. It is a 0/1 vampire. It is for a black and a colorless. Reads, whenever Blood Artist or another creature dies, target opponent loses a life and you gain a life. One I like even better here, Zulaport Cutthroat. It's only your creatures, but still great. A 1/1 human rogue ally for, same mana, black and a colorless. Whenever Zulaport Cutthroat or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Cruel Celebrant is white and a black for a 1/2 vampire. Whenever Cruel Celebrant or another creature or planeswalker you control dies, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. Another one here that I think people might miss that was made in Ultimate Masters, it looks like, Hissing Iguanar. It is red and 2 colorless for a 3/1 lizard. Whenever another creature dies, you may have Hissing Iguanar deal 1 damage to target player or planeswalker. You don't gain the life like you do with Blood Artist, and it is a mana more, but I like it. I think it's very underrated. Another one here, Mayhem Devil. This one is going to be the best of these abilities because it does read a permanent. Let's see here. It is black, red, and a colorless, so a 3-mana devil, that's a 3/3. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, Mayhem Devil deals 1 damage to any target. Yes, that does include you sacrificing those treasures. That is going to add up quick. Something that's also going to add up quick when it comes to the treasures is Reckless Fireweaver. Is a 1/3 human artificer for red and a colorless that reads, whenever an artifact enters a battlefield under your control, Reckless Fireweaver deals 1 damage to each opponent. And the other one here is Nadir's Nightblade. It's black and 2 colorless for a 1/3 elf warrior. Whenever a token you control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses a life, and you gain a life. And yeah, that does include the treasures. Now, taking a step back here, Sir Conrad the Grim, 2 black and 3 colorless for a 5/4 human knight. Whenever another creature dies, or a creature card is put into the graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you could pay 2, a black and a colorless, to have each player mill a card, which is always good. If you have nothing to do with your mana late game, sink all of that treasure in there just to get some damage in on your opponents. And if you like the idea of the cards I mentioned before, as far as the artifacts leaving the battlefield, you could always add in the Academy Manufactor, which basically just says whenever you make a treasure, you're also going to get a food and a clue. And those ETBing and leaving are going to add up really quick. And you'll see a card later down in the line of this video, and you're going to think back to this right now and think, wow. But before we get there, let's go to the next category. Want to see me do it again? Well, let's see exactly what we're talking about here. With the first card, Panharmonicon is a 4-mana artifact that reads, if an artifact or a creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time, which means you play this turn 4, play Negan the next turn, that is going to trigger twice. So, you're going to love that. Here's another one, very similar. Conjurer's Closet for 5-mana artifact that reads, at the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. A newer card that added to the Conjurer's Closet is very similar, is Teleportation Circle. It is white and 3 colorless enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target artifact or creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. Now, in these kind of scenarios, it's mainly going to be for Negan that you're bouncing like this to return back to your battlefield. It could be Dockside, which is going to get you tons of treasures. It could be Kalain that gets you a treasure. You know, it could be one of the sacking creatures that makes the opponent sack. You know, really, it's up to you, but I think it works for a lot of the creatures in the deck, this ability. I'm a big fan of it. Another one, Eerie Interlude, is white and 2 colorless for an instant that lets you exile any number of target creatures you control and return them to the battlefield under their owner's control at the next end step. That one's a little bit more than the rest. That one's $2 as well. With this one, Ephemerate, 1 mana, exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. And it has Rebound, which means if you cast a spell from your hand, you exile it as it resolves. At the beginning of the next upkeep, you can cast this spell without paying its mana cost. And again, you got Docksides. You're going to love these kind of cards. Next one here, Cloud Shift, is 1 white mana as well for an instant that says exile target creature you control and return it back to the battlefield. Very straightforward and to the point. Very similar to the other ones there. These ones here, next up, are going to be a little bit more of the protection side, but it does get your back on bringing this back. You're going to want something like a Kaya's Ghost form on Negan. It is an enchantment aura for 1 black. Enchant creature or planeswalker you control. When enchanted permanent dies or is put into exile, return that card to the battlefield under your control. And the next one in this category here is Supernatural Stamina. It is an instant for 1 black mana that reads, until end of turn, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains. When this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. Now, leaving here, going into some card draw on the deck. First card here is Faithless Looting. It is a 1 mana, 1 red sorcery that has draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. And it also has flashback for red and 2 colorless. You may cast this card from your graveyard for its flashback cost, and then exile it. Another one here is one that sticks around for a while, is Phyrexian Arena. 2 black and a colorless for an enchantment that reads, at the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card and you lose a life. One I love here for some nice filtering. Read the Bones. A black and 2 colorless sorcery, scry 2, then draw 2 cards, you lose 2 life. You get to look at a good amount of cards here for 3 mana. I am a big fan. Another one that I just absolutely love, some may think it's a bit steep at 4 mana here. Unexpected Windfall is red, and 2 colorless for an instant, which I also love this part. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you have to discard a card. But then you draw 2 cards and create 2 treasures. I am a big fan of this. No doubt. It's the kind of card draw that we want here. I wish there was a little bit more of this. And the last card here in the draw category, Liliana Dreadhorde General, is the only planeswalker here in the deck. This one is $32. Just a heads up, you may or may not want to put it in your build. If you don't want this and you want something cheaper, just look for a when your opponent's creature dies, when any card just look for a whenever a creature dies, draw a card kind of ability, because that's why we want her here. She is 6 loyalty. Liliana costs black, and 4 colorless, so 6 mana, but trust me, it's worth it. Static ability. Whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. +1 gets you a 2/2 zombie. -4 has each player sacrifice 2 creatures, and -9, each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. And yes, that includes lands because it is just reading permanents. That is ridiculous. So that gets out of the drawing category. Let's get into some removal and ramp. Arcane Signet is a 2 mana artifact that taps for 1 mana of any color in your commander's identity. Boros Signet is a 2 mana artifact you put 1 into that taps for red and white. A Rakdos Signet is a 2 mana artifact that you put 1 into to tap for black, red. And then a Orzhov Signet is an artifact for 2 mana you put 1 into that taps for white and black. Simple enough, right? Again, with all the treasures, you don't need much more than that. Now, going to the removal, you have Anguish Unmaking. Now, hear me out. I understand, you want the creatures to die. On the other side, you're going to get a bunch of triggers. Sometimes you're going to want a few of these for permanents. There's going to be those Darksteel Forges you find, or maybe a Smothering Tithe. And then Despark has become a great favorite of mine, is white and a black for an instant exile target permanent with mana value 4 or greater. And then Swords to Plowshare, most people should know this one, 1 white instant to exile target creature, its controller gains life equal to the power. And then we have Liliana's Triumph. It is an instant for a black and a colorless, and it reads, each opponent sacrifices a creature. If you control a Liliana Planeswalker, each opponent also discards a card. Maybe you'll play it while you got your Liliana out. Maybe not. That part doesn't really matter. And we have a total of 2 board wipes in here. The first one being Toxic Deluge. This one has gone down quite a bit since a reprint in Double Masters. It is 2150 right now. And it is 2 colorless and a black for a sorcery that reads, as an additional cost to cast a spell, you pay X life. All creatures get -X until end of turn. It's one of the greatest board wipes in the format right now, as well as Blasphemous Act, and I'm so glad that it's sitting at $3 because I love it. It is in sorcery for a red and 8 colorless, but it's never going to cost 9 mana because this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield, and it does damage to each of them. This all seems pretty kick-ass, Christian, but how are we going to win? Let's get into that. And going on to the end portion of our video here with the win cons of the deck. Sounds fun, right? But how are we going to get it done here? This card coming up is the third dragon of the deck that was mentioned when we were talking earlier about Magda. And that's the legendary creature. You could sack 5 treasures to bring out a dragon or artifact at instant speed. And this is going to be the guy here. It is a 6/5 dragon for 6 mana. It's red, and 4 colorless for a dragon with flying and trample. And whenever Hellkite Tyrant deals combat damage to a player, gain control of all artifacts that player controls. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. Talk about a win con, it has win in the text. Going on to another card that also has win in the text, we're going to love it here with Revel in Riches. It is a 5 mana enchantment that's black and 4 colorless. And this reads, whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, create a treasure token with sack to add 1 mana of any color. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. Which is even better, really. I guess the only plus side of the other card I mentioned was that you can get it out at instant speed if you have Magda and 5 treasures. But keep in mind, that's 5 less that you have to go towards the 20. And the third card is Marionette Master. It is a human artificer 1/3 for 6 mana, 2 black and 4 colorless. It reads Fabricate 3. When this creature enters the battlefield, put 3 +1/+1 counters on it, or create 3 1/1 servo artifact creature tokens. You're always going to put 3 +1/+1 counters on it to make it a 4/6. Right? Is my math right? To make it a 4/6. Whenever an artifact you control is put in a graveyard from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's power. That is right. Use your lands to cast this. Because when you do, if you have, say, 10 treasures, you crack all of those treasures, that's going to be 4 damage for each treasure that you're sacrificing. Yeah, that's right. 4 damage each. It's like Perforos. But you're getting mana when you sack them. Pretty damn good. Now, this is the final part of all of my videos here. We're going to go over the MVC, the most valuable card of the deck. And in this deck, that's going to be Lucille. 1 black and a colorless for a legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has menace. I'm just kidding. I had to do it to you. Why not, right? We're definitely going to include the card in the deck, though, because whenever a quick creature attacks, defending player sacks a creature, and you get a walker token, which is like a 2/2 zombie. Equip 4 is a little rough, but let's get to the real MVC of the deck, and that is Anointed Procession. Is a 4 mana enchantment, a white and 3 colorless, that reads, if an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. Yes, this is going to give us double treasures. That's why I wanted to add the white, and Negan is the perfect commander for it. Well, everyone, I appreciate everyone who stuck around this late in the video. I appreciate you watching. Please leave a like and subscribe on this video. If you'd like to see things like this in the future, let me know in those comments. If you didn't like it, let me know. I just want to know what you guys want to see. And I hope you guys are pumped up for Crimson Vow, for it's not too far from the future here. If you'd like to see another deck tech that I've done very recently, you can check out the new frog, Grolnock. That's right, it is Frog Tribal in Simic, and we're going to be doing some milling. Go check that out. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye-bye.